Seeing as how many of you guys seem to enjoy these type of videos, I may as well do another. So if you saw the end credits scene from Justice League, the majority of you guys are fully aware on what's going to happen for the sequel. But for some of you who may or may not know about the post-credits scene, it more or less sets up the introduction of the Injustice League for the Justice League sequel. So in this video I'm going to be doing some sort of wish list on the potential villains who I personally want to see for the DCEU's version of the Injustice League. Or the Legion of Doom, or whatever the fuck they're going to call this super villain team. Now the way I sort of figured this one out is by picking at least one villain from each rogues gallery. So I'll pick at least one Superman villain and then one Batman villain and so on and so forth. And the amount of members will amount to roughly the same as the Justice League. So I'm going to assume that the Justice League will have the exact same members, including Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash and Cyborg. But obviously there's going to be several new inclusions for the sequel. So to make things interesting, I'm going to assume that Green Lantern, Shazam and Martian Manhunter will be the new inclusions for the Justice League sequel, seeing as how these three particular heroes are fan favourites. As well as the fact that Warner Brothers themselves do have plans for these heroes moving forward. And with that being established, that would mean that I have to pick one nemesis for these three heroes. So without further ado, let's begin. Now getting the obvious two out of the way, let's begin with Superman's personal nemesis, and we all know by the post-credit scene that the leader for the team is in fact going to be Lex Luthor, as it was in fact his idea to form a league of his own. And say what you will about Jesse Eisenberg's version of this character, it does seem like this version of Lex Luthor will in fact change moving forward, as this version of Lex Luthor could progress into becoming the Lex Luthor that we know from the comics. Next we have a villain coming from Batman's rogues gallery, and again it's a pretty obvious one as we already see him getting recruited. I am of course referring to Deathstroke. And out of every Batman villain from the rogues gallery, Deathstroke in my eyes is the best one to match Batman physically, seeing as how both Batman and Deathstroke are considered to be the best fighters in the DC universe. Next we have a villain for Wonder Woman to face off against, and there's no two ways about it, it has to be Cheetah. Now one could argue that people would say, well, Cheetah has to be saved for the Wonder Woman sequel. That would be true, but that's the thing, you could set up Cheetah for the Wonder Woman sequel, and then by the end have Lex Luthor recruit Cheetah for the inevitable Justice League 2. And out of all of the Wonder Woman villains, Cheetah is probably the most well known next to Ares. Next we have someone from the Flash's rogues gallery, and there's plenty of villains to choose from coming from the Flash. And for obvious reasons, I want to avoid using a speedster, but ultimately I decided to pick Captain Cold, because out of all of the Flash villains, Captain Cold to me at least seems to be the most associated with the Injustice League. And also I think that it would be pretty cool to see Captain Cold on the big screen. Now originally I was torn between him and Gorilla Grodd, and the only reason why I didn't pick Gorilla Grodd is purely because Grodd is a leader type character, and already we have Lex Luthor who's in that role. And so if we were to have Gorilla Grodd as well, then there'll be a bunch of conflicts within the team. Next we need a villain for Aquaman to face off against, and honestly it could really go either way between Ocean Master and Black Manta, as both of these villains will be introduced in the Aquaman film. But if I really have to bet on it, then I have to go with the latter and say Black Manta, because similarly to Captain Cold, Black Manta is very associated with the Injustice League. And also he's a mercenary who has major beef with Aquaman. So to me it would make perfect sense for Lex Luthor to recruit Black Manta for the Injustice League. Next we need Cyborg to face off against, and Cyborg doesn't really have any villains of his own. So instead I thought of a villain who's very technological and is also a major villain for the Justice League. And for that I'm going to have to say Amazo. And honestly I think that would be pretty cool to see a villain who is capable of mimicking other powers from the Justice League members. And I know that many people would say that Amazo would be too overpowered, but ultimately you could nerf him down a bit by having him take on the weaknesses of the other Justice League members as a side effect. Like if he took Superman's powers for example, then that would mean that he also has the exact same weaknesses. And finally we get to the newcomers, starting with Green Lantern. Now there's plenty of villains to go by, however there's no denying that the villain should be Sinestro, because Sinestro is the perfect nemesis for Hal Jordan. And much like the villains that I've mentioned on this list, Sinestro is very associated with the Injustice League. Now sure, one could argue that Sinestro has already been seen before, but specifically in the 2011 film, but we've never really seen Sinestro as a straight up villain in any of the films. And at the end end of the day, no other villain from the Green Lanterns can hold a candle to Sinestro. Next we need a villain from Shazam's Rogues Gallery. And really there's no villain for Shazam to face off against other than Black Adam. Now sure, all the diehard Shazam fans would point out some other villains for him to face off against, however none of them are as popular nor even as dangerous as Black Adam. And we already know that he will be introduced in the DC Extended Universe at some point. So Black Adam being in the Justice League makes all the sense in the world. And finally we get a Martian Manhunter who, much like Cyborg, doesn't really have many villains of his own. Of course outside of the White Martians, who are better saved for his own film, as well as his twin brother whose name I'm not even gonna bother to pronounce. So instead I'm gonna think of another villain that Martian Manhunter could face off against who is kinda in his league. That villain of course being Solomon Grundy. Because for starters, Solomon Grundy is a fan favourite villain, as well as always being in the Injustice League, and the reason why I picked Solomon Grundy to match off against Martian Manhunter is because both of these characters are very strong, very endurable, and because Solomon Grundy for the most part is mindless, that would make him a very difficult opponent for Martian Manhunter to face off against. Now at the end of the day, I don't think that this is going to be the legit roster for the Injustice League, but if it wants me to pick out all of the members for the Injustice League, I would probably go with something like this. And it's always fun to do a wish list of sorts, especially with the endless possibilities on which villains you should pick for the Injustice League. So which villains do you personally want to see in the Injustice League in the DC Extended Universe? And also, what do you personally think of my wish list? Comment below and share some thoughts. And as always, thank you guys for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. Take care and have a good one.